Hello. Right, chapter 17. Now, you might remember the end of the last chapter was quite sad, so hopefully we'll find out what's happened with Hattie. This chapter is called In Search of Hattie, and here's a picture of Tom in the hallway. You can just see there behind him there's some stuffed animals in the cases, and some plants on a stand and an umbrella stand, look, with some walking sticks. So, at the end of his first frenzy of battery upon the outside of the garden door, Tom leaned against it, sobbing for breath. From inside he heard the grandfather clock coolly striking the hour, and a distant upstairs noise of voices and hurried feet. He could not open the door, and he now realised he had exhausted the strength of body and will that might have carried him through it. He was shut out from Hattie, and he was also shut out from his own bed in the Kitsons' flat. But the fear of Hattie remained greater than the fear for himself. Tom withdrew across the lawn into one of the yew alcoves. All he could do was wait. It seemed a long time before the garden door opened and Abel walked out. Tom went across to him at once and addressed him. "Abel, please, how is Hattie?" Tom thought that he had prepared himself for anything from Abel. If Abel believed him to be a demon from hell disguised as a boy and intent upon bringing misfortune to Hattie, if he believed that, then he would hate Tom and rail against him, cursing him and banning him with the exorcism of prayers and the Bible. The one thing that Tom had not been prepared for was that Abel should go back to his safeguard of refusing to see or hear Tom at all. "Abel, Abel, Abel!" Tom begged. "She's not dead, is she? She's not dead?" At last he saw Abel's eyelids flicker, and for that moment he allowed himself to see Tom. Tom's face had the dirt of tree climbing upon it, and two clean tracks through the dirt from eyes to chin, where tears of exhaustion and terror had made their way. Altogether there was something about Tom, something so like a boy and so unlike a demon, that Abel was trapped for the last time into speaking directly to him. "No," said Abel, "she's alive." And he fixed his eyes straight ahead again, took a deep breath, and walked deliberately through the side of Tom's body and on towards the potting shed. Abel had left the garden door open behind him, as it always stood in these days of summer. Tom's thought was at once to go into the house again, though whether to get himself to bed or to find out more about Hattie he did not think out. The matter was settled for him. This time the furniture did not dissolve in front of him as he advanced up the hall. The stuffed creatures held their ground and stared at him firmly with their glass eyes through the glass sides of their cases. He had time to notice the mercury in the barometer and to see that it had reached a very dry. He saw everything clear and solid as he passed it. He came to the grandfather clock. He saw that its fingers were pointing to 11 minutes to 5, and saw again the design behind the fingers. Even in his anxiety for Hattie, his attention was arrested by it. There was nothing new to be seen, and yet he seemed to be seeing everything freshly. He still did not know who or what the angel creature painted was there, striding on sea and land with open book, but he felt that he almost knew the meaning. One day soon he might know. Now he turned from the grandfather clock and towards the staircase. He saw it carpeted. Each carpet tread was held in place by a shining brass rod, and tread by tread the carpet mounted softly and steadily upstairs. Tom took a step towards the staircase and then halted, wondering what he was about to do. Behind him he was leaving that garden kingdom of Hattie's, where he and Hattie and Abel were the only 3 inhabitants, and Abel had even denied that there were more than 2. He was leaving that and going forward into the Melbournes' house. Already the Melbournes and their lives seemed to be pressing upon him. At the foot of the stairs to the right was a row of pegs, from which hung Melbourne hats and capes, and coats and capes. Next to these was a boot cupboard. Tom knew it was a boot cupboard because the door was ajar, and he could see the shelves inside, and standing upon them all the Melbourne boots and shoes and slippers and pumps and gaiters and waders and spats. Opposite the coat pegs on Tom's side was another of the brackets, and on it had been left two marbly backed ledgers and a little safety inkwell and an old-fashioned round ruler of ebony. Which Melbourne did they belong to? There was a door next to the bracket, the door through which Susan had once come with her kindling wood and matches. Now from the other side of it Tom heard a murmur of women's voices. He couldn't hear what they were saying. He couldn't hear who they were, although he imagined that one voice sounded like Susan's. Tom felt among many strangers and lonely. There was no Hattie here, and his secret fear was that there might be no Hattie anywhere. Abel had said, "She's alive," but perhaps that meant she's just alive, or even she's alive but can't live long. In the past Tom had managed to convince himself that Hattie was a ghost, and now he must face what went with that at some time she must have died. Ghosts had always died before they became so. Tom's reasoning ran round in anxious, confused circles. He needed a great deal of courage to go forward and set his foot on the bottom step of that soft, silent stair. Perhaps, although Tom could be very brave, perhaps he would have lacked that last touch of courage, but for the sound of the grandfather clock behind him. Its ticking sounded to him like a human heart, alive and beating, and he thought of Hattie when he thought that. He braced himself and began going upstairs. When he reached the upstairs landing, he was in a part of the Melbourne's house that he had never seen before. So it seemed to Tom. He had forgotten that this house was, too, the house in which, somehow, his aunt and uncle, as well as the other tenants, lived. There was not very much to remind him of that now. The first-floor landing of the Melbourne's house was carpeted, and wider than the corridor between the flats that Tom knew, and there were many doors off it, each leading to a bedroom, instead of two doors only, which were the front doors of two flats. The little stairway that had simply gone up to Mrs. Bartholomew's front door now ended in a tiny landing with three doors off it. Tom surveyed the first landing. Every door was shut. So were the three doors on the attic floor. Behind which of all these doors did Hattie lie? There was really no clue, so Tom chose the nearest door on the first landing, took a deep breath, concentrated, tensed his muscles, and drove his head steadily through the woodwork and into the room on the other side. Hattie was not in this bedroom. The dust sheets over the bed and over the other furniture showed it to be a spare room. Its window looked over the gardens. Tom could see, even from his position in the door, the tops of the yew trees opposite, and a great height of the ivied fir unfallen. He was looking only for Hattie, so he did not linger over this view, but later he had cause to remember it. He wrenched his head back through the door again and considered what next to do. He had intended to push his head through each door in turn until he found Hattie, but now he wondered whether that method would be wise. Already he was tiring, and his ears were singing, and his eyes aching, and even his stomach, which had remained on the safe side of the door, was heaving a little. If Hattie were behind the last door he came to try, he might never be able to reach her. Surely, in these special circumstances, dishonest methods were excusable. Tom began to peep through keyholes and to listen at them. Through the third keyhole he heard something, a very soft, rhythmic swishing sound. He could not think what made it, and a keyhole showed him only a washstand with basin and ewer, a length of lace curtain draped over part of a window, and a very upright chair. No, he could not imagine what the noise could be. Surely, at least, it could not be coming from Hattie lying ill, perhaps dying. The thought of her thus made him turn desperately on to try the other doors, and then again, even as he turned, he thought that perhaps Hattie was lying in that room after all, but delirious. No sound or motion except for her hands ceaselessly and softly stroked down the sheet of her bed. Swish, swish, swish. Tom turned back to the door from behind which that sound came, and began fairly to ram his head through it. He was up to his eyebrows in the woodwork when he heard, his ears were still free, a step on the stairs behind him. Tom had a horror of being caught part way through a door. He pulled back and faced about quickly. A man was coming upstairs. He carried under one arm the office ledgers that Tom had noticed in the hall below. He held the inkwell and ruler in his hand. He had the grave look of someone who earns his living and had just finished earning it for the day. Who was he? A Melbourne, Tom was sure. These were Melbourne features. The man came directly along the landing, directly towards Tom, but he had no concerns with Tom after all. He stopped by the very door that Tom had been trying and knocked it gently. "Mother?" The swishing sound stopped. A voice that Tom recognised at once as Hattie's aunt's said, "Who is that?" "James." "James?" Tom was startled. James had only been a youth when Tom had last seen him in the garden. Had so much of Melbourne time passed in so little of Tom's time that James had grown into a man, and a businessman at that? Here he certainly was, broad and tall and strong, with a high shiny collar and that face of gravity above it. "You can come in," said the woman's voice. "I'm only brushing my hair." James went in, and Tom went with him. He had not meant to, for he was not an inquisitive, impertinent boy. But James's question, even as he opened the door, was, "How is Hattie?" They both stood just inside the bedroom door, the man and the boy. Once James looked around him uneasily, as people will who know they are not alone, and yet guess at some other presence in the room, a cat perhaps. In front of her dressing-table mirror stood Hattie's aunt. Her long brown hair fell heavily as low as to her waist, and she was passing her hairbrush down it, front scalp to tips, with that steady swishing sound. Tom saw as he watched that hair was not all brown now, but greying. Time had passed too for Hattie's aunt. She was not answering James at once. She stopped brushing her hair and began twisting it and braiding it. As she did so, she said casually and coldly, "Hattie will do well enough." "Is that what the doctor says?" "Yes." "We must be thankful, then." "Thankful." With her hand still at her hair, Hattie's aunt turned to face her son. "Thankful. But what was she doing to have the accident? Climbing trees, if you please. Has she no sense of what is fitting to her sex and to her age now? She is old enough to know better." "Hattie is young for her age," said James. "Perhaps it comes from her being by herself so much, playing alone, always in the garden." "Oh, you were always kind to her," cried Hattie's aunt, and she made what she said sound like a bitter accusation. "And so she is never to grow up? What is to happen to her if so? I don't know. She is a strange enough girl as it is." Hattie's aunt had turned back to the mirror to arrange the braidings of her hair. "Of course Hattie will grow up," said James, and Tom admired the way in which he stood up to his mother's anger. "But what is to become of her then?" "She is not to expect anything more from me, surely. I have given her charity enough." "In that case, mother, she will have to earn her own living somehow, although how she is to do that I don't know. Perhaps she will marry, although again she knows no one, and meets no one outside this house and garden." "I will not have her ruling in this house when I am gone." Hattie's aunt had not turned from the mirror, but was staring intently into it at the image of her son reflected there. "What do you mean, mother?" "You and Hubert and Edgar are all grown now, and it is in your father's business, and independent as far as that goes. Very well. But if any of you later thinks of marrying Harriet, do not expect ever to have a penny from me. Hubert has never cared for the girl, and I believe Edgar dislikes her. But you have pitied her." In the silence after this, Tom rather expected James, who was so bold, to cry out that he had not thought before of marrying Hattie. But now he saw what a good idea it was, and he certainly would marry her as soon as she was of age. They would be rich and live happily ever after, all in spite of his mother. But James was not romantic. He gave a little sigh. "I had no intention of ever marrying Hattie. I don't suppose that I ever shall have. But she is certainly to be pitied." "She is pitiable, certainly," said Hattie's aunt grimly. And surely, mother, now she is growing up, she should see more of the world than this house and this garden can show her. She should meet more people. She should make acquaintances. She should make friends. You know perfectly well that she loves only to be alone in the garden. We can draw her from that. We have friends, and she must not be allowed always to hide away from them as if she were afraid. When we make parties up, can be made to want to join them, boating on the river, and picnics, cricket matches to watch, whist drives, carol singing at Christmas, skating. She doesn't want to grow up, she only wants her garden. We can make her want more. I'll go to her now and talk to her and say that, when she is quite well again, she must go in for a gayer life. I'll say that we all want her to go out, to make friends. We all. Tom, watching the woman's face in the glass, saw a cold disagreement in it. Can I say that you wish it, mother? You will waste your pity and your breath with Harriet. Can I at least say that you agree? You can say what you like to her, you can do what you like with her, and the less I see of her, the better. She turned her head so that she saw her son neither in reflection nor in the flesh. James withdrew, and Tom with him. James went to a door at the end of the landing, knocked softly, and entered. Tom waited outside until the interview with Hattie should be over. He listened to the rise and fall of James's voice as he talked. He spoke gently, as though to someone who was ill or had been so, but he spoke at great length, and Tom thought that Hattie's injury could not have been as serious as he had feared, because if she could listen to all that James had to tell her. So, what has James told Hattie? Maybe we'll find out next time. Cheerio!